Hey friends, Bill here. How you doing? Hope you having a good week. Having a good one here, trying to fight through the great invention of the internet here. I love these things. Anyway, we'll talk about buying electric cars later. I'm excited today. Really, today's been a big day already, and I'm sure July the 4th is going to see a lot of gospel preaching, at least here in the States. I know Stephen Kendall and Adam Cutshaw were preaching up in Columbus, Ohio at the Red, White, and Boom event. I'm sure there's a lot of other things going on this week in Atlanta when I was living down there. I mean, it was July the 4th was an amazing day. We had started off with a Peachtree Road Race, about 50,000 people. Me and my buddy Chap and Bob McCrary would drive over there and stand in front of the Publix. We'd get over there about 6 o'clock in the morning and wait for the race to go. And it'd go till about 9 or 10, and there'd be 50,000 people rolling by. We'd preach to the whole crowd. And then you have an event either downtown at Centennial Park or over at Lenox Mall, and they'd have 100,000 people. These events were huge. So July the 4th in the States is a big day for gospel preaching. So I hope you're out preaching somewhere. We're back up for a second. We had a good Whitfield week a couple of weeks ago. And so, Heath Pusel is doing a great job teaching expository preaching. And I think we're sort of getting into rhythm here about everybody getting used to it. And so it seems to be working well. And I might have mentioned this last week, but I think we're thinking about adding a couple of classes for next year, or along the way, probably offering Greek or Hebrew. We're trying to get to the infinite details of the text and what does that say. And so we've talked about that. He's supposed to get back with me after doing some research on how to get that done. And so that might be something we add to the process in the ever-ending pursuit of being a fruitful preacher of the word, Acts 6:4, being a man of the word of God in prayer. Today I'm excited to have Gary Jones with me to interview Gary. We met, he's coming to the Summer Olympics in Paris, July the 26th. And actually we've only met online. I've seen his videos out preaching. He's from Bournemouth, down in the southern end of England. He's English. He's born, raised in England. And so he's not an American transplant. So love hearing him and his perspective on things, and also seeing him out preaching and seeing other guys out there preaching with him as well. I look forward to being together with him in Paris, and Gary meeting the other guys from the States as well. It should be, Lord willing, a lot of fun, and hopefully a good sign of more gospel preachers in England. So we're going to bring Gary on and learn more about him. Gary, how you doing today?
Hi, Bill. Yep, good.
How's Bournemouth today?
Sunny.
Sunny? All right.
Sunny.
Is it on the coast, or is it right? How far are you from the coast?
3 minutes. We're on the sea. Yeah, we're right.
That's pretty amazing.
Bournemouth's a seaside town,
And do you, like, for us, as looking across the channel, I haven't really been there before. I've been down to Southampton, but for us, the English Channel is an historical place. The D-Day and all these other things that went on. Y'all see it the same way, or is it to you and everyone else, the kind of the natives there, just a beach? How do you perceive it?
No, there's an appreciation, definitely, of the kind of history. And there's a lot of landmarks around here that relate to that. We've got the Netley War Hospital down the road near Southampton.
Yeah.
So there's a couple of beaches down near Calshot near Southampton where some of the troops were launched for the D-Day landing. So there is an appreciation in the country. You're probably more excited about it in America. We fascinate with English history. Maybe we take it for granted a little bit, Bill. Who knows?
Gotcha. I got to tell you this: my son and I were watching that. He has a fascination with World War I and II. He's 11, and so he'd gotten this sort of I think it's a 3 or 4 series thing about World War I and World War II, it all rolling together. So we were watching it this past week. I did not know this, but in the end as it was coming to the end, of course, it was leading up to D-Day, but it told a story about General Patton. I guess you know the story, and how they took him, they put him over there in England across from Calais. Is that how you say that? Calais, France?
Calais. That's fine.
See, that's hillbilly talk, right? Calais, brother, you know where that is, just across the water. So anyway, so they put him over there, and they had all these tanks and stuff. They were blow up stuff. They weren't really real. Did you know the story? And so
no, go on.
Yeah. So what happened was, so Hitler. It's really fascinating. Hitler moved 1 million people, 1 million soldiers to Calais, which I guess is a very short part of the channel, to wait on Patton to
Yeah.
lead the army across the channel. Meanwhile, it was a diversion. Meanwhile, D-Day was Normandy was where they landed. Now listen to this. So they get across on Normandy. Hitler, as they tell the story, Hitler waited 3 days. He didn't believe it. He kept believing they were going to cross at Calais. And they gave them 3 days. So they not only landed, but Hitler gave the Allied armies 3 days to get into France and start marching to Germany. It's really a big deal. You know, if he'd moved 1 million men immediately to Normandy, it would have really stymied the war effort. It's pretty fascinating. I did not know that. I didn't know that. So that's interesting. Well, cool. Well, tell us. Here's what I want to know. First of all, was there a day? What was the day like in your life? You went to bed, you never thought about preaching, and you woke up the next day and you thought about preaching. Do you remember that day?
It was a growing sense of kind of, it was a kind of thought in the back of my mind. I wish I could do that. I could see the sense in it. I read my Bible and I see it happening all over the place. The most direct way of communicating the gospel, you know, and it just really made sort of sense to me. And I was kind of wondering why you don't see it more often. And I thought, well, I'd kind of like to do it. And that kind of built up really. I just didn't think I could. I didn't think I would. I thought, I'd have to go and maybe go to Bible college and do this and do that, and there'd be a huge long process to get there. But it didn't quite work out. It was quicker than I thought, actually. So yeah, it wasn't one day, Bill. It was just a growing sense of, I just felt it's something. I can't say I felt called to it, but just kind of, I wish I could do that. It was a desire. I had a desire.
Gotcha. So did something happen to get you thinking about it? Because I hear what you're saying. I mean, typically that we sort of creeps in, but like you weren't thinking about it. Now you are. What did you read a verse in the Bible? Did you see something online? What sort of initiated the idea, or was it just a spiritual revelation as you read through Scripture?
It was. Yeah. It was really. I was astonished. When I became a Christian 5 years ago, the message, the gospel message, just seemed so simple.
Yeah.
And I was astonished why someone hadn't just told me it. It's so simple. Why didn't someone just tell me? It's not complicated. A child can understand this message.
Right.
And I thought, well, I want to be one of those people that do just that give other people the opportunity to hear this message in a way they can understand.
Gotcha. I see what you're saying now. Okay. Well, so you started thinking about it, and I mean, you mentioned some things just a minute ago, but what well, there's a couple questions here. The first one is, did you immediately begin to think of places to go preach, or were you thinking of, I can't do it, I'm not qualified?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, that was probably went on for about a year. Just wish I could do it. And I'd seen some guys, online, some quite well-known people like Ray Comfort. He's probably the most famous. He's possibly the most famous street preacher in the world now, and he's done an awful lot for street preaching. But I'd seen various people doing it, and I just thought it's something I didn't think I'd be able to be honest. But so I wasn't confident enough to start plotting my campaign, like General Patton.
There you go. Amen. Or like, again, I recognize, like, before asking this question, a friend of mine told me one time, I'd been at this a while, and he goes, Bill, where do you go? And I said, hey, man, go where the people are. So, like, there's this sort of blindness to the obvious nature of where and how to do this. So were you afraid, or were you just like couldn't see where to go? Like, remember any of that?
Well, let me tell you the story of how I eventually got street preaching.
All right,
So I used to do some weight training with my pastor, he'd come round. I've got a gym in my garage, and he'd come round a couple of times a week, and we'd train and we'd talk about all sorts. We had a great time together, you know. And I sort of plucked up the courage. One day I said to him, I really want to street preach, you know. It's been going on for ages, and he kind of excitedly, you know, he looked pleased that I'd said it, and he said, "Okay, if that's what you want to do, I'm going to introduce you to someone called Mike Mellor." Now, Mike Mellor is quite a well-known street preacher, ex-pastor in this country. A lot of people in the UK evangelical scene know Mike Mellor. He's written a few books on evangelism. I didn't know who he was at this point. And so, yeah, he said, I'll introduce you. So one thing led to another. And about a month later, I'm having a conversation online with Mike. He's a busy guy. And he said, you know, well, come out with us. That's the first step. Just come out and see what we do. So we arranged to go out in Southampton a couple of weeks later. So now in my mind at this point, I thought I started the ball rolling here. So I kind of had it all worked out. I thought what I'm going to do is maybe go out with Mike for a couple of years, watch what they do, you know, get comfortable, and then I'll stand up and preach. So I arrived in Southampton with my plan, went up, met Mike for the first time in person. Him and another chap preached, they finished preaching. Mike looked at me in the eye, and he said, "Right, your turn."
I love it. That's good.
And I said no. And he goes, "Go on, your turn." And I said no. And he said a third time, he said, "Go on, your turn." And I thought, I can run away and probably hate myself, be a coward, or I can just get up and do it. So I didn't have any time to feel apprehensive because I didn't realize I was going to be doing it. And I stood up, and it was wonderful. I can't say it was a Spurgeon-esque discourse that I gave at all. If I could probably see myself now, I'd probably cringe maybe a little bit. But I felt a sense of liberty and freedom, and I felt, you know, that God was giving me the words to speak. You know, I felt completely comfortable, actually. You know, slightly nervous, but it was quite a profound experience. It's probably one of the most exhilarating, edifying things I've ever done. It was amazing, and that was it. I was kind of hooked really straight off the bat. Not to say that, you know, going would you'd have times where you feel a little bit nervous, perhaps, but that's getting less and less. But you know, you sort of get more comfortable in that environment. But yeah, so that was it. The ship was launched that day, and thank you to Mike Mellor. I don't know if he's listening, but thank you for. He obviously knew that he could push me like that. He obviously read me quite well, and that's what needed to happen with me, you know. So yeah, that was
what did he say? What did he say when you finished? Like, what did he say?
He said, "Well done." He said,
"Well done."
He said, "Well done." Yeah, he took some photos of me up there to show me, and he said, "Well done, you did well." He said, "Keep going," and he's been a wonderful mentor to me actually, because he's never. I think there can be a little bit of a tendency in the sort of street preaching world. People want to make people like themselves. I'll do this, say that, you know. With Mike, he always very much said, listen, God uses our individual personalities, different traits, we're all different. He said, you've got to find your own voice. Don't try and copy someone else. And he was always saying that to me, you know, and he'd encourage me as I developed. He'd say, you're finding your own voice now. You're finding your own, you know, I've got my own way of doing things. You've got your own way, you know, and that's what, you know, that's the liberty we've got. That's the freedom we've got in that, you know, in this work. You know, God uses a preacher's individual personality and sort of traits, you know, to bring the same message in maybe slightly different ways, you know.
Is Mike, is he with Open Air Campaigners?
No, Mike is on the board at the Open Air Mission.
Okay, all right.
So you got the Open Air, yeah, it's another big organisation. So yeah, it's he's a good guy. He's a good guy.
So that happened. What happened next? When did you go out next after you got that first time?
Week later, I was out again, and for about probably 18 months, I was out twice a week. So I was taking time off work, going out preaching. Just Southampton, Bournemouth, a few other places, but they were sort of our local spots really. But I'm concentrating on Bournemouth now. There's a real, I've got my own, trying to build my own little team. You know, it's sort of, I value prayer for that actually. It's really, you want the right people with you, you know. It's as you probably know, Bill, we see all sorts of people in the open air scene, you know, and they're not all how can I say this graciously? you get the guys who don't want to go to a church, right? The lone wolves. You kind of, you know, we're looking for men that are committed to their local church, you know, leading proper lives, committed to their local church, orthodox in their theology, you know, no wacky ideas, people that understand the simplicity and the power of just preaching the gospel. Because there's all sorts of issues, and you hear street preachers talking about politics, end times, and we're always saying, listen, that doesn't save anyone, it's the gospel. So, you know, it's so simple, isn't it? But the simplicity of it gets overlooked by lots of people, and that can be frustrating, right? You know.
Oh yeah. So just to track the story. So you went once with Mike, and then you started going out on your own for the next 18 or so months. Is that what happened? And then you covered.
No, I went out with Mike. I went out with Mike for a good 18 months.
You went out with him 18
and another
months.
chap called Mike as well. Yeah, I'd go out with those. So
Okay.
I was kind of going out as part of a team rather than leading a team.
Gotcha.
I don't like the term lead a team, but it kind of ends up that way, doesn't it? You have someone who's the ringleader. That's kind of the one that's trying to organise things around them. So I go out as part of these teams locally, and then a series of events happened, and I really felt God was calling me back to Bournemouth. We've struggled for a credible gospel witness in Bournemouth for a while, to be honest. There's all sorts of things going on, all sorts of religious groups down in the town centre doing their thing, and we just felt we needed a good, well, God obviously felt we needed a sort of good orthodox gospel witness in Bournemouth. So that's what we're trying to build at the moment,
So 18 months with Mike. Well, I'm sure you were talking to your pastor during those 18 months. Like, what was the dialogue with him, with Mike? Did Mike at some point go, okay, Gary, it's time to go out on your own? How did that come to an end? So just to talk about those sort of relationships over that 18-month period.
Well, my pastor, he's always been very encouraging, actually. I'm very blessed because I don't think all Christians can say this, because I think there probably are churches that don't support open air work. I've heard about them, people that go to them, but the church I go to understand and support the primacy of preaching the gospel, and whether that be in the church building or outside. But the pastor's quite what he wants the church to be looking out, which he does. So there is that drive, and I've always been very well supported. The prayer that I get at church is incredible. People, lots of brothers and sisters are always constantly interested. How's it going? Want to hear stories who we've been talking to. So I'm blessed, because it could have been a lot harder, perhaps in another church. If I didn't have that support. So it was just a kind of natural evolution, really. Me coming back to Bournemouth. Logistically, it makes sense because I can get to Bournemouth in about 10 minutes. Southampton takes me a best part of an hour. So it was, there was a need there. And there's a few good preachers in Southampton covering that area. Mike still goes to Southampton, and there's a team there, and there's some very good preachers. So it's kind of well covered. So I was just coming back to my home turf. I just felt was lacking really in that witness,
Okay. Awesome. What did like if you were going to share if this happened with you and Mike over that time, what were some of the main tips he gave you to help you get better or to just be more confident? Do you remember?
Well, Mike, I learned everything I learned from Mike by just watching the guy. He talks to people, not at them. He talks to people, and he very much always impressed upon me the importance of an individual single soul. He said it's nice when you get a crowd gather, and that can happen at times. He said, but we go out and it's the ones and the twos. He said, don't be ashamed of that. There's got, and he's got a very gentle way about him. He doesn't pull punches. He can talk about hard topics, but in a very gentle way. So it was just watching him really. But the big lesson that I learned from that guy was that we go out and we talk to people. They're people that have got their own fears. their own. They're all coming from different places in life. We've got no idea what's going on in a person's life that we're talking to, So it's just, talk to them, learn to read people, How many times have we seen street preachers standing there shouting at people? And it's that's not my cup of tea, and it's not my style. If a preacher shouted at me in the street, I'd probably walk away, to be honest. But and a lot of people, the surprising thing is, Bill, a lot of people do want to talk. They will talk to you if you're respectful to them. Even if they don't agree. And there's an awful lot of people that said to me, even though I don't agree with you and I don't believe, I kind of respect the fact that we can have this conversation. So, which is nice, which is lovely, Occasionally we get people that absolutely don't agree, and that's a kind of spiritual thing. They really, there's a hatred towards God. The Bible says that people dead in their sin hate God, and sometimes that really manifests, and you see it, and that's kind of unavoidable. But on the whole, most people will have a sensible conversation with you, and we just obviously relying on God to. It's a miracle when someone's saved. It's an act of the Holy Spirit. We can't do anything with that. Just have to go out faithfully, preach the word, and just trust that God will bless our words and raise people to life.
The volume doesn't save. The gospel saves. That's funny. Well, cool. So you hung out there. You watched Mike do it, and then the Lord led you back to Bournemouth, and then of course your pastor was with you along the way. Come back there. Was there any okay, now here I'm making a commitment to my hometown? What did you start to think? I'm glad to be here. I can reach people now. I got a little more nervous because I wasn't talking to strangers. What went on with you then?
I don't know really. I just had a growing sense that I wanted to get out preaching more and more, and really establish ourselves in one area. I mean, there's quite a few towns that we could go to around here within an hour's drive, that are accessible. But the beauty of Bournemouth is this: we've got an awful lot of foreign language schools. Okay, so you go down in that square, and you will have people from all over the world arriving and talking to you. It's like being a missionary without getting on an aeroplane.
That's cool.
We were out 2 weeks ago, and we take a musician out with us. He comes out and plays a guitar between the preaching, and he'll preach a little bit as well. And a chap come up to listen to the music. And where was he from? Algeria. And the musician was talking to them, and he said, "Have you heard of Jesus Christ?" And the guy said, "No."
Wow.
And we were like, "Really?" He said, "No." He literally straight into the country. He came up. We offered him a copy of the Bible. I don't know what the legal situation in Algeria is with people reading the Bible. It's an Islamic country. I don't know. But he was really grateful. We gave him a copy of the New Testament. He said he was going to go away and read it. He was, So it's like he's an untouched people group, really, on our doorstep. That's what we're dealing with. So it's quite a special place, and there's not really any other. I suppose Southampton would be comparable because of all the cruise ships, so they do get a lot of people from overseas there. But Bournemouth is absolutely rife. People from all over the globe, that we're sort of rubbing shoulders with, really. But yeah, so
that's the beauty of London. I mean, of course, just since I've been there, they speak 300 languages in London. Like you don't have to go anywhere. Just when it comes down to getting the word out, England is a great spot. That's why you love it, because English is the main language, and then you have the liberty to preach and distribute the Bible to these Muslim dudes from North Africa. That's really special, I mean, anyway, that's awesome. So you got down there, you settled in, you got after it. So how long you been preaching in Bournemouth exclusively?
About a year.
Yeah. And has it changed? You're there a year, you work in the area, more people that know you probably seen you. Describe some of those interactions.
You do have your locals, definitely. People that you bump into. There's one of our friends down there is a chap called Carl. He's a sort of local celebrity. He's a big issue. Do you know what the big issue is? It's a magazine that was set up by an entrepreneur probably 30, 40 years ago. and it's to give to homeless people that want to try and improve their situation and get off the streets effectively, and they can buy the magazine at a reduced price and sell it. And they have all sorts of celebrities in there. It's a proper, well-produced magazine.
Okay.
And Carl's the local big issue seller. Everyone knows him. He actually got invited to the House of Commons recently.
Really?
To talk about homelessness. Yeah, absolutely. And he recently met. Who did he meet? No, Prince William. Yeah, he met Prince William as well recently. So he just seems. Cool. I don't know how he does it. If you watch Carl, I don't know if he is. Hello, we love that guy. But you get all the local faces, and they get to know who you are, and they're really supportive. Actually, they are. They're pretty supportive, even if they don't agree or they're not Christians. They're not thinking about God. There's a lot of love down there, and long may it continue, because there's some places in the world that we'd be beaten up and killed for saying what we say on the street.
Wow. Have you seen any co-workers while you're preaching? What do they say?
Yeah, we do. There's what, you mean other gospel preachers?
No, guys that work with you, that you work with at work. At your work. Yeah.
One or two. Yeah, one or two. They're all right, really. It's sort of they probably laugh behind my back, but I don't care. I mean, they've got to have someone to laugh at. It might as well be me.
That's true. That's funny.
But yeah, it's they all know where I stand. I made it, like, in the job that I'm in now. They knew from day one I was a Christian. I wasn't preaching when I started my job, but it's never caused me any problems.
Tell us one or two good stories. Some of your best interactions that you remember.
One or two good stories. I remember a chap. It's probably a couple of years ago. I hadn't been preaching long, and when I was flitting between Southampton and Bournemouth, which I was for a while. I was preaching. I don't know if you've ever had this, Bill. Someone catches your attention. You've got no idea why, and you point them out. Yeah. And this guy, I pointed him out, and so he knew I was talking to him, and I got chatting with him, and he came over, and he was listening, and I thought, he's either going to hit me or he's fascinated. He was kind of blank look on his face, just listening. And he came up and he said, so he was a boxer, he wasn't, I don't know if he was a professional boxer, but he runs a boxing gym down in Essex. And who's that boxer that lives in Australia, became a Christian? What's his name? Name come back to me. I'm not a massive boxing fan. One of the big heavyweight ex-professionals, Christian guy, lives in Australia. His son's a professional boxer now, and he was over doing a show, and this guy was helping put on this show. The boxer he was late on his plane back, spent some time with Kevin. Kevin was telling him all about his life. He had various different problems, and he said, you need Jesus Christ, And
wow.
I spoke to him, and he basically said, I can't believe you're talking to me. All these people keep talking to me, And I think he went on to become a Christian. I had a few messages with him for about a year later. Wow. I just thought, that's incredible. God sent, what's the name of the boxer? English heavyweight.
Wasn't it Panda?
No, it wasn't. No. I should have. If I'd have known you were going to ask me, I would have had this prepared, Bill.
Oh, that's good.
That was quite memorable. It's just, I don't know why. It was busy. It was a busy shopping period. There was hundreds and hundreds of people, and I just spotted him. I couldn't spot anyone, and I just started talking to him, and he was probably stood about 20, 25 meters away from me, so quite a way. He wasn't even the closest. And it's just incredible. We always pray when we go out, Lord, can you bring the right people at the right time to hear the right words? We don't know who you're drawing. We've got no idea. But I just felt drawn to him. And then when his story came out, it just became apparent there was a supernatural work going on in his life. There was all these different inputs, and God was touching his life in every way, really. So that's quite amazing. Other notable. There was a lad in Southampton, and I spoke to him, and he was. Have you experienced this, Bill, when someone, and you can't explain why, is absolutely captivated while you're preaching, and you think this is supernatural now? They're just. You think it's not me. I'm not that interesting. I'm not. But they're just really, really captivated. This lad was really captivated, and I started talking to him. asking him a few questions and this sort of thing. And I said, "Have you read the Bible?" He said, "Yes, I've got a Bible in my bag." He got it out. He was a student in Southampton. He'd only arrived like 2 months before. His name was Eddie. He got this Bible out, and it was the Jehovah's Witness Bible, right? And he said, "I've met these guys. They're Christians." And I said, "They're Jehovah's Witnesses." And he went, "Are they?" He had no idea. He was getting involved, taken to the meetings. They'd scooped him up, freshman at university. Is that what he's called? Freshman at university. They got hold of him. He was going to meetings. They were showering him with kindness. I think that's kind of what they do. Anyway, got talking to him, so kept contact with him, and I said, "Listen, this is absolutely, this is the gospel. These guys, they're not Christians. It's a cult. They're not Christians." And he had no idea. He had no idea. But then he told me that his nan's a Christian, and she's been praying for him for years and years. And she found out he was involved with Jehovah's Witnesses as well, and she started going on him. We got him out of that. He said he went to them. He gave back the Bible. He got into a good church in Southampton that we recommended. Now he's moved to Reading, and he's in a good church in Reading. So it was kind of God used us to avert danger, basically. That was, and he was really grateful once he'd started going along to an Orthodox church and hearing the Bible taught properly. He was ever so grateful. But yeah, that was quite a special time. I haven't spoken to him for a while. I must contact him soon to see how he's getting along.
That's good. Before we talk about Paris, if you were like standing before 1,000 guys and encouraging them to get out and open air preach, what would be your persuasive argument to them to do so?
A persuasive argument to 1,000 guys.
Yeah.
Do you believe that God saves people through the preaching of His gospel? Is that your belief? If it is, then we've got a problem, because people don't walk in churches generally. There's better things for them to do on a Sunday morning. Okay, years gone by, it might have been different. The shops were all shut, and it might have been more of an appealing thing for them to do. But now churches seem to have got used to sitting there and waiting for people to walk through the door, or people within churches inviting their friends. But that presents us with a real problem that I think needs addressing. So I would say, listen, if we rely on people coming into church, it's not going to happen very much. If we rely on inviting people that we know, we're going to fill churches up with people like ourselves. And this gospel needs to go out to everyone. And open air preaching is the most effective tool for doing that. I've got no control over who hears what I'm saying. That's God's. I've witnessed to Satanists, lawyers, housewives, guys just out of prison. People from all walks of life, have heard the gospel, because when you take it out in public, it's indiscriminate. It's free. The gospel's free. It needs to be. Jesus said, "I'll make disciples." Jesus was an open air preacher. All the great men of the Bible were all open air preachers. And I don't really know what's changed. We didn't have church buildings for probably until the 4th century. So, that's not. So we want to talk about a biblical pattern for the gospel being preached. It's very much go and tell, not come and see. I think we got a bit too used to doing that. And it's if we want to be effective, we need to go out and proclaim the gospel to the dying world. And all I would say to anyone is, if you've got a seed of desire to do that, if there's anything in you that says, "I wish I could do that," pray about it, because that might be God just planting that there. Fight the fear. God will be with you, and you'll be amazed. I'm amazed every time I go out. I think, blimey, here I am, preaching the gospel. I never thought I'd do this, but it just feels comfortable and natural now. It's taken a while to get here, I suppose. Would that be very persuasive, Bill? What I just said for that?
That's good. Well done. Well done. Good answer. So if you're going to tell them the primary skill to have in preaching, what would that primary skill be?
Talk to people.
All right.
Speak to people. Talk to people. It's important to listen as well, you know, not just it's about communicating, right? It's about communicating. Even when, I mean, an ideal for an open air preacher is to have a huge crowd of people stood around them, right?
Right.
But the times when that happens, we'll get engaged talking to one person, and then people crowd around to listen. That's how that happens. So you have to be able to develop that dialogue. You know, you're not just bashing people over the head. You're listening to what they've got to say, and and having a concern for people as well. You know, the thing with open air preaching and the danger of it is this: because it's quite, let's say, a fringe activity. There's not a whole lot of Christians doing it, okay, and a lot of them say, well, that's special gift, it's a special gift, and we've heard that stuff before, right? So there's a real danger. It's pride. We're susceptible to it. That you go out and you come home and you go, haven't I done well? I stand up there and I'm not like all the other Christians that are sat in churches. And there's a real danger in that. But actually, I've seen a lot of preachers going out and doing that. And it can become a religious dead activity as much as anything else. And I've seen preachers standing there, the same old spiel. They're kind of, their motivation for doing it, it's not really about their objective is to tick a box saying that they've been out and done it. And it's like, I kind of think that's the wrong motive, really. You know, we want to impact people's lives, right? We want to go out. We believe it's biblical, that God blesses the work, you know, if it's done correctly. And we want to go out and we want to see people's, we want to speak truth into people's lives. We want to lift Jesus Christ up as the only hope in this world, because he is. That's what we want to do, and we can go out and sort of talk into the air and go home and congratulate ourselves, but kind of missing the mark. My definition of preaching, if I go out and preach, and sometimes we have days like this and you think, blimey, I couldn't get arrested today and no one's listening to me, what's going on, and you will have days like that. And if that happens to me, I think, well, I haven't preached. I'm only preaching when I'm speaking when I've got someone's attention, so that long-winded answer there, Bill.
That's good. That's good. That's good. I mean, you do have to definitely care for the salvation of the sinner. You have to have some interest in their welfare. Otherwise, it does get like you're talking about. I mean,
yeah,
it's not like something that you're always bubbling at the top. That comes from prayer and Bible study and stuff. But that's really, when Paul says, "The love of Christ compels me." That's kind of what he's describing. And so that's a good point. Really good point. Last thing on this, and then we'll start talking about Paris. Like you met Mike, well, and others. Do you find that what would I say? That the state. Well, here's what I want to say. Like in the States, the Lord's raised up a lot of guys really through Red Comfort. And the nation's flooded with people now. It's, in one sense, going from 0 to 100. Do you see in England like a similar sort of movement of God's Spirit? More guys preaching, things are happening, that this is taking root. What do you see out there?
I think there is actually. There's I've seen quite a few guys. We've got a local Bible college far from here. And I've seen quite a few of the students of the Bible, which I thought was really encouraging. The students of the Bible college out preaching, which is fantastic. I mean, someone said to me before, one of the dangers with Bible college can be they can almost quench the fire a little bit, and people get so caught up in the academic side of Bible study that the kind of the practical, coalface, rubber hitting the road ministry kind of get put to one side. So it's really encouraging seeing quite a few young guys from the Bible college out preaching the gospel. So that's fantastic. And in the country, in the UK as a whole, I mean, I don't know a lot of these personally, but there's a lot of guys with like YouTube accounts that there's a younger generation coming up and doing it. And some of them are doing it exceptionally well. We've got a fella, I want to mention him actually. His name's Curtis. He's a guy up in Newcastle, and yeah, he's an inspiring guy actually. He's left. He was a fireman. He's left the fire brigade. He's in full-time ministry. He's got the funding he needs, and he leads a team all over the northeast. And I think they've got plans to travel further in future. So that's an exciting ministry that he's running there. He's gifted communicator, you know, and yes, it's encouraging. We've got the open air mission in the UK. There's a lot of associate evangelists that around the open air mission, which is good. They've been around 150 years. I think Spurgeon mentioned them as an organisation when they started. He said, "I commend the open air mission to you." So there you go. So they're still around doing their thing. They're kind of stalwarts of the UK street preaching scene, but there seems to be a groundswell of younger people, and probably because of people like Ray Comfort, I would imagine. You know, he's an inspiring guy, and he really, he's done an awful lot. I think all over the world, probably. Would you say for street?
Oh yeah, no question. Ray Comfort, he's the man.
His own style he's got, and he's something else.
Yeah, he definitely did it. He's launched more people out in this thing than anybody, and he's good at teaching everything. That's pretty interesting. I wonder sometimes, it's just, you know, we don't really know the answer to this, but as technology has changed, like that the younger generation are not so wedded to the brick and mortar building. And like I've certainly got a sermon on technology and how technology means how do you deliver the word of God. But I do think the church building is really a technology of delivering God's word. I'm not talking about meeting and gathering. And so older people, that's where we associate the technology delivering the word. The younger people seem to be freer from these things. So hopefully that does, like you're indicating, area, send more guys out there. It just seems to be some liberty these guys have, some good, some bad that we don't have, and I hope it really relates to the gospel, right? So,
Bill, can I just say, it's one thing I've noticed, right? Youngsters, I mean, how often do we hear within our circles the church bemoaning the state of society? Oh, it's, you know, we can see the bad things that are happening, absolutely. Yeah. But there's an advantage going on here that we need to be aware of. You've got a generation of young people coming up that are not, they're completely ignorant, really. They don't carry, there are a few generations on from church-going families now. You know, they're completely removed from it. They don't know any Christians. And when you speak to them, it's like a blank canvas. And a lot of them are really intrigued. They're genuinely, they're really, really intrigued. And I think I think it was Martin Lloyd-Jones was talking about Christianity in the Victorian era. He said everyone went to church. And he said that was a curse, actually, because all these people would go along to church and they'd sit there because it was socially acceptable. There was social capital to be had by going to church. It'd be good for your business, good for your reputation. And he said, Lloyd-Jones said, I can't wait to see the day when that all ends, you know, when basically it's black and white. People that go to church are there for the right reasons. Those that don't. And I think that's the days we're living in now. A huge advantage. And, you know, I think if I could encourage people to go out and preach, they'll find that the harvest is plentiful. There's absolutely, you know, there's a lot of people that want to hear what we've got to say.
That's a good point. Like the idea of preaching, hey, you know, especially in the States, you know, like, hey, we're a Christian nation and we've got to go back to the past to go forward. Like that's not really helpful because there's not the context for that message. That's our message in our age. So you really have to move into the future and like you're talking about and deal with people as they are. And hey man, they're willing to listen. In other words, if you're hung up on the past, I think you bring a prejudice that doesn't really help them listen to what you have to say because you're not preaching the cross of Christ. You're preaching the past. Right? Yeah. So, that's definitely true. I think, too, the whole thing, like, we get a little bit of it here. You get a lot of it in England. The immigration, like, God is bringing these people from Muslim nations into our world so we don't have to go there and get killed. They'll come to us. That's why they're here. go talk to them. You just can't wring your hands and say, "Oh, those crazy Somalians, what are we going to do? Go preach to them,
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a good
Yeah.
time. To me, that's the real opportunity we live in. So good observation. All right, man, the clock's ticking. Let's talk about going to Paris. What leads you to want to go there? Now, as an Englishman, seriously, do you have an affection or affinity or hatred for the Parisians, or what's your attitude towards these people?
When I was 7, my mum sent me to judo classes. Right,
Yeah.
I wasn't very good at judo. But I remember when I got on the mats, I thought, wouldn't it be wonderful one day to go and fight in the Olympics?
Really?
Well, I'm nearly 50, and I'm about to go and do a different, embark on a different kind of bout at the Olympics. I'm not in the judo team, but we're going there to do battle for people, for men and women's souls, and proclaim the gospel. Bill, if I can be in a situation where there's a lot of people and I can reach them with the gospel, I'm there. I'm well supported by my church. They've because I think your organisation, and maybe you personally, contacted the network of churches that my church is a part of, looking for open air preachers, and they obviously said, well, we got Gary preaches, and they asked me if I'd be interested. I was like, oh, yeah, definitely. So had a few conversations with you to iron out some of the finer details, but I'm really excited. It'd be good. Be good getting there with. I'm the green. Was it you Americans say? I'm a greenhorn. I'm the new boy.
Green.
I know you've forgotten more than I know, right? So it'd be good getting there with you guys. I can ask you questions, learn from you. Just absorb it. You've been preaching a long, long time, haven't you? So I look forward to that.
That's a lot of fun. It's always a lot of fun, We got a couple Canadians coming, American guys coming. I think there's 8 of us now, so it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting, be dynamic. Plus, staying. I think we're staying in this French village kind of thing where the train drops us off. We'll get a little good dose of that. Is there do you speak French at all? Do you have any exposure to the language, like as an Englishman across the channel?
It's a kind of well-known joke among anyone that knows me how bad I am at French. It's not good.
Okay.
My wife was saying you should try and learn some. I was like, yeah, but I'd kind of insult them. It'd be that bad. At school, I didn't listen. I was sent out of the class most of the time for being disruptive. I just had no interest in French at all. All I wanted to do was like woodwork and science, things I was interested in. So it's not. I've just never got round to learning French. So I'm kind of hoping either you're good at French and you're going to stand with me all the time, or there'll be enough people I can preach the gospel to in English. So my level of French is like Del Boy out of Only Fools and Horses, which I've told you about, haven't I? Pretty bad. So, do you speak French, Bill?
No, not really. I've been over there before. We had a little run. We were up in Montreal a couple of weeks ago, which is
Southern Fried French.
That's right, Andy. That's right. Andy, no, that's right. Southern Fried Hillbilly language. If they don't understand me, boys. And we were in Montreal, and I don't. They understood us. Like the thing I noticed, and I've got to do this before we go, but all the signs were in French, and you can eventually learn what they're saying. But I think the key here is to figure out what the main words are, and that's how we get around. So, but French, it's going to be interesting, that's for sure. It's going to be interesting. I was going to ask you, now this is a serious question. Of course, not everybody in the States thinks of these things, but like Napoleon, is he still a primary figure in France, or is he just dead and buried and forgotten?
No idea.
No idea.
We're about to go and find out. No,
that's right.
No idea. But
the interesting thing about France, go ahead.
Probably not as much as who's that rugby player, Cheval? The caveman. He's probably more highly thought of than Napoleon nowadays. I would have thought. Yeah.
It's funny. We went over there. My wife and I went over there. We got married, and we went over there. They're having the rugby. I think it was the Rugby Championship 2007. We had a good time. People took tracks, and there's some really good spots to stand where the metro let off. And so, I personally found it really easy. We had trouble at the stadiums. The Frenchmen aren't police weren't very nice to us, but that didn't matter because we could find people other places. So my memory is good. And then what I did, I probably told you this. What I did is I actually got a French Bible, and I'd read through like chapters that I knew what it was saying, and I would try to read it in French, like Southern Fried French, in case somebody come up and ask me a question. So I met a lot of people there at the Champs-Élysées down by the Louvre, Chinese Christians, Muslim guys. So met Englishmen down there. It was very productive in the scheme of things. So I don't. It should be fun.
You looking forward to it, Bill?
Oh yeah, sure. Yeah, I think I'm looking forward to riding the train. The fun part is really, well, it's all fun in a sense, but when you go to these other countries, you know that it's the culture that you get to partake of a little bit, riding the train, seeing the city. Paris is obviously a historical city, and I really think the modern day Olympics started there in 1896, and so they're having a lot of political activity. At least it could be a wild scene, it could be a calm scene. We don't know, but either way, it's a big city. We're looking for sinners. There's going to be plenty there. Well, cool. Any other thoughts about going to Paris?
So are we going to be concentrating on the stadiums or in other areas, you know, like outside of the stadiums? That was my kind of line of thinking, really. Are we going to just...
We will probably, that's a good question. There's only a couple of stadiums that are large enough to set up there, basically. So what I will try to do is find busy spots that might be like here's what's going to happen. Like on the opening ceremonies or something like that, you're not going to get close to that stadium. Where were we at? Were we up in England? Where was I at? And we were up in Birmingham for the Commonwealth Games, and a couple years ago. And you know, at those big track and field events, like the big events, you couldn't get close to the stadium. So what you did was you got close to the metro stop by the stadium, and stuff like that. You know, I mean, you have to respect security in these environments, and so we'll find places like that. And for me, at least, if we find 2 or 3, 4, or 5 busy locations in the city or up in St. Denis area, and we just park it there all day, that's good enough, man. I mean,
yeah, absolutely,
that's good.
Absolutely. That's the exciting thing about this work, isn't it? It's dynamic, and you might go to a spot that you think that's going to be good, and it's not. You move on, and you kind of you're constantly praying. If things don't seem to be happening, you're always stopping to pray, and it's. I don't know about you, but I've never, ever once come home from an open air preaching session where I didn't think I saw something of God.
Right, sure.
God's work happening today. Sometimes loads of things, other times not so much, but every single time, there's always those. It's like God gives you that little encouragement, isn't it? Every time I'm working, you might always even see. We don't see the full scale of it, do we? But you just get that little bit of encouragement where. I'll tell you a quick story. It's of me and Mike. This is to encourage any preacher that's had a bad day, right? So I was out with Mike Mellor a couple of years ago in Bournemouth. It was during the week, and it was busy, and it was the worst day. Well, I've been preaching for long, but I thought this is terrible. No one's listening. Mike's been preaching for 40 years. He said this is terrible. No one's listening. And in the end, we were going to be out for sort of probably 2.5, 3 hours, and after about an hour and a half, it was so bad. He said, "Should we get a coffee and go home?" I was like, "Yeah." It just was on for whatever reason, and we were despondent. We were just packing up, and this lad of about 20 years old came up to us, and I'm paraphrasing now. I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was the closest you can imagine to saying, "Tell me what I need to do to be saved."
No way, really?
He said, "Listen," he said, "I've just finished university." We didn't see him listening to us, by the way, when we were preaching. Didn't see him. So he was obviously hidden around somewhere, listening to everything that was being said. He said, "When I was at university, one of my housemates was a Christian guy, and he used to tell me, he told me about the Bible. He told me, he told me all this stuff, and he told me about sin. And he said, I cannot get it off of my mind, and I don't know what to do. I don't want to be a sinner anymore, and I don't know what to do." I mean, so feeling totally flattened. Right, that's it. Sack today. If we're going home, to a lad saying, "Tell me what must I do
That's
to be
amazing,
saved?"
man.
Thank God. Thank you. That was what an encouragement. So
No,
I hope that
man.
guy's somewhere now. You hope he's somewhere. I hope he's a man of faith now, but don't know. May never see him again.
That's a great point. I think what happens here, even if you know an area, is you're going out, you don't know what's going to happen, right? So especially in the big city of like Paris or London, even London, although we're familiar with it, you really like the days are not the same. And so when you roll into an area, you're kicking off the spiritual environment for that moment, and you have no idea what's going to happen. And that uncertainty is part of the work. And then in Paris, you have to, like you talk about, Gary, praying a lot. Like, we're going to try to find a busy spot, but we might get off on a slower spot. We might say, hey, let's set up here. This is going to work because God is leading us to set up, right? So that constancy, vigilance in prayer, and attentiveness to what the Lord's doing is really vital. It definitely, it is it's what makes these trips fun and tell the stories. And it's wears you out. You get back. I'm ready to go to bed, man. I'm done.
Yeah, it's a special kind of exhaustion, isn't it? I've never experienced it. If I go from preaching, sometimes I can't even speak. And my wife says, "You're all right, love." And
no kidding.
You're not physically tired, but you're constantly vigilant, and it's a spiritual thing as well. There's a burden you carry with you, don't you?
Oh yeah, you definitely transcend into the in the world of the Bible, and it can be a burden. Not a burden, but it can be traumatic. Is a better word. It's traumatic. When you think of people who are this is a big topic, but I'm not going to get all into it. But when you consider that people are really sinners, we don't really believe man is a sinner. We don't. If the church believed people were sinners, believe would be a word for taking action. The world would be a different place. And so when you see it and you're living in that world, which I'm describing, that's the world you live in. It's pretty heavy. It can be pretty traumatic. And so it's a challenge. It's definitely a challenge. So we're gonna have a good time. I want to last thing here. We haven't got into your bodybuilding action, but what is the big, like, deadlifting or squatting? What is your favorite? What's your favorite workout move? Like, Andy needs to hear these things. He's on here. So
at the moment, well, I go. So when I go to the gym, it's powerlifting training. So I squat, I bench, and I deadlift. I don't bodybuild. There's a difference.
Squat, bench, and deadlift. All right.
Yeah, that's it really. And then a few exercises around those to improve those lifts. So I've got a love-hate relationship at any one time with, I don't love all three all at once. At the moment, I'm loving squatting. I'm not liking deadlifting, and bench pressing. I'm kind of, on neutral ground. Like, if you'd have asked me last year, it would have been deadlifting I was loving. Squatting I wasn't. So it can change from month to month, But
how much do you squat?
My squat's going up, my deadlift's going down, and my bench press is about the same. So,
How much do you squat now?
200 for 5 I did the other day, which isn't my top. I've come down a little.
That's
200
kilo.
Pounds. Yeah. That's 4.
How many pounds is that?
440, is it?
440 pounds. That's staggering.
5, yeah.
What do you bench press?
I did 400 pounds recently. It was a PB.
A pinch. Holy cow! What do you deadlift?
At the moment, about 220, so about 440. But I have
staggering.
550. Yeah,
that's
not bad for an old fella, is it? Eh?
That's not bad, man. At your age. I hope those dudes in France don't mess around, because we're gonna say, "Hey, Gary's here to take care of you dudes over here. You living in the past, all you crazy Frenchmen." So,
well, I'm sort of hoping they might sign me up for an Olympic event, so they might see potential in me. And maybe someone's dropped out of the judo team and they say, "Come on."
You never know.
Come on, it's your time to shine.
They just drive by and pick you out of the crowd and say, "That's him. He's a gold medalist," right? So that's pretty cool. Well, listen, I promised last thing. So here's what we want to know. Like Andy, if Larry's still listening, all us guys is, you know, we want to know when you're going to invite us to come stay with you in Bournemouth and spend a week with you and stay in the house with you. When's that going to happen?
That'd be wonderful. Let's get it arranged. That'd be fantastic. You know?
All right.
Yeah.
Well, we
Yeah.
have a good time. Would your wife like that, or would she kick us all out?
You'd like this area. There's a lot to see. You know, if I was American, this is an area. There's quite a lot around here that would interest you. You've got Southampton, got the Titanic Museum. You know the Titanic. Yeah. So we've got Bournemouth, which is a lovely Victorian seaside town. There's we've got Weymouth, which is a lovely historic fishing port. There's loads around. We've got the New Forest, great area, really beautiful. You know.
All right.
Plenty of preaching spots, Bill.
We'll have to get it on the calendar and come over there and
let's do it, brother.
Have some good old southern times over there at Bournemouth. All right, Gary. Thanks so much for tuning in. I really appreciate you chatting. Look forward to seeing you.
Thanks.
All right, man. Have a good night.
Weeks time, yeah.
Okay, Lord willing. Take care.
God bless, brother.
Bye. See you.
Bye, Bill.
Bye. What a treat, man. What a treat. Hey, listen, these are gems out there. You meet a guy like Gary, and just through sort of sending some cards and making calls and stuff. What a treat. So that's another thing, his story, not only about him personally, friends, but also just Mike and other people out there. If you're not out much, you don't see other things happening. And then typically there's not, an overwhelming number of guys out open air preaching. So you don't see them all the time. But God's working, raising men up. And then, like he said today, he's guys hear the gospel, their life as they pass by where he was at. So God works in Bournemouth or other places. So be encouraged. Pray for Gary and his ministry there and the other guys there at the Bible College, that these guys will be preaching for Mike Miller. And the Lord willing, we'll all be together sometime. Our friends, hey, listen, thanks for tuning in. I hope you have a good night and a good Fourth. Thanks for tuning in. Bye-bye.